Hello and welcome to this video on turning a Chinese star jasmine vine into a bonsai. A star jasmine, Chinese jasmine, or Chinese star jasmine among many other names are all used for a species of flowering vine with a strong odour. Most people find said odour appealing. However, it is a species that is also native to places like Japan, southern China, Vietnam and Korea, so depending on where you live it may not tolerate exposure to the elements very well. Making into a bonsai solves some of these issues to an extent, while presenting others. For that purpose, we sourced a small but reasonably developed specimen from a nursery. The plant is on the small end of things, but will grow fast if cared for. The key here is going to be keeping the plant in check to redirect any growth and energy where we want it. With that in mind, we've chosen an informal upright. A formal upright and even cascade would have worked and looked nice, but thinking about what we have already and what we can do going forwards, among other factors, an informal upright it is. To get this, we start by removing any branches not where they should be. These will take well to being planted as cuttings and likely give us a number of new specimens in a year or so, but for now we'll focus on this one. What we should have left is the core trunk, some branches and hopefully leaves if we haven't managed to make a complete mess of things. This is perhaps the big issue. We must remove any branches that have large areas with no growth. These bare parts of the branch, generally speaking, will not go back or backbud to develop leaves and consequently branches. They will largely remain bare forever. So to quote Lewis Carroll, off with their head, except it's off with their branches. The other issue is that some branches are growing and just never seem to thicken, no matter how long we leave them there. So they might start, but then they stop, and this stalling is a problem. They will be given a chance, but if there's no development after a couple of years, they'll be pruned away. This has to be done just after the plant flowers, and we can take as much as 20% off the vine at a time. You can then follow with the aforementioned maintenance and direction pruning on top of this again, and that should be done throughout the growing season and into summer. We won't need to repot this again for a couple of years, but repotting will be an event we go through every 2 years, and sometimes less if the growth and conditions are just right. For now we need to repot this in a way that the rather thin trunk will be forced to develop in the bari. The star jasmine bonsai do need bright but somewhat indirect sunlight. They're basically something of a slightly delicate plant but can survive outside. It's best kept somewhere where they'll get at least partial shade, and that shade is enough to keep them alive and growing well, but not so direct light that they can burn or get damaged. You can also, if you're so inclined, try growing them inside near an open window, but for the most part keep them outside, it's better. There are a few techniques that this jasmine bonsai will benefit from more than other species, or at least will be using them more frequently. The first of which is simply pinching. This allows us to remove new buds that are emerging, particularly desirable if we don't want to try and get out the tiny scissors that are useful in some instances. In other cases, it's just convenient to be able to remove them as we're going by. This will force more compact growth and help us to get greater ramification. Another issue we'll find with this is we do need to thin out branches considerably more than other bonsai species. The key here is that we don't want to necessarily have as much internal backbudding as we might with other species. This will mean that we need to remove fairly large branches inside the canopy, and this will reduce the density of the canopy quite considerably. But in doing so, air and light will be able to get inside, and it will not only circulate the air, thereby preventing things like mold and rot, but also allow light to get in there, allowing for healthy growth. Another issue is when we're cutting back, we're going to have to be cutting back quite aggressively at times, and this means we have to worry about something called heading, and this is fundamentally just pruning as we would commonly call it, but the key here is that what we're trying to do is force ramification back to a reasonably common point along all the branches, and this gives us a compact shape, but also a somewhat dense canopy given the earlier mentioned point about thinning. And then finally we have wiring. Now, jasmine can be wired, that's not a massive problem, but we need to be careful, and that's because the branches are particularly delicate, they're very brittle and they will easily break. Just ask us how, and we'll happily show you the videos of us proceeding to break branches with an uncomfortable and uncanny regularity. But also, well, simply put, the wiring is necessary. The vine-like nature of jasmine will cause them to grow quite a lot, let's say, and the best way to get around that is simply to wire it to try and direct that growth as much as we can. What we've done should lead to a nice little but solid jasmine bonsai. One that if handled well will be a source of nice smell throughout spring and summer. We might even be able to extend it to autumn, but that'll be very optimistic. At that time, we'll just shift to appreciating the appearance instead. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please do post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.